I'm Neil Dubord, Chief of the Delta Police Department. This week on our show...
That incident was really important to me because up until that time, I had the question in my mind, like, can I deal with, can I handle this? Can I do it? Can I do the job? And that one, it was like almost a relief. Like, it was a huge incident. It was like major. It was still the same thing, but it was like this huge monkey off my back.
Bend, don't break. This is a Delta Police podcast.
Hear more about how police officers strengthen their resiliency through the power of story.
Craig, well, it's great to have you here. And just before we start, I want to be able to send a quick shout out to all the people that listen to our Bend Don't Break podcast. And it's so important that for first responders to be able to have an opportunity to hear about how others have gone through these challenges and have overcome them with whatever strategies they've used. So again, to all our listeners, thank you for listening. And we sure look forward to you being able to like us, either on iTunes or on your Google Play, and for us being able to continue with many great podcasts in the future. So today, very fortunate to be able to have someone from the Vancouver Police Department sitting with us, and it's the first time we've interviewed someone from the Vancouver Police Department, which is about a 20-minute drive, I would say, or a 15-minute drive from Delta to the edges of Vancouver. So we're thrilled to have you here, Craig, and I've heard a little bit about sort of your life story, and it's certainly very, very interesting, and I think one that our podcast listeners will be very interested in. And so maybe we can start off and just give me a short bio about yourself, when you joined.
Well, I joined the Vancouver Police Department in 2003, and just to back up, thanks for having me. It was unexpected, and I've listened to quite a number of the podcasts, and hopefully my version is in line with everybody else's, and I mean, it holds the test, I guess, as to what's been done so far. So, yeah, I started with the Vancouver Police in 2003. In August, and as everybody else did, straight into the JIBC for training, and really exciting time in my life. I was a little older applicant, not crazy old, but older, and I was just really excited to get started and get going. It was good.
Great. So you, the academy typically back then, how long was the academy?
It was about 9 months, broken up into three different parts. You know, the learning and the classroom stuff, and then you get your time on the road, and then you got to come back and do the kind of the final making sure everything's the way it should be before you head out there and start interacting with the public and stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
When you get on the road, it's like any other new officer. I imagine you still have lots of trepidation, and you still feel like someone who doesn't certainly have the job all under wraps. So tell me about your first little while, your experiences.
Yeah, when I first got out, I was, as everybody is, put into patrol. I was assigned to Squad 3-6, which was good, District 3, Team 6. And our District 3 is kind of our southeast portion of the city. For anybody who's familiar with Vancouver, it's, basically with some changes or variations, it's Main Street to the west, Boundary Road to the east, and then south to the water, and north to, I think it's... Broadway, something like that. So, yes. But it was a really good district at the time when I joined. Not that there's any bad ones, but it was lots of craziness going on. Car chases still back then, even though we don't do them anymore. Stolen autos, lots of big ERT style calls going on. So it was a good, exciting time. It was and it was a challenging place, busy. So.
And I know early in your career, literally within 4 months, I think it is, you ended up going to a significant call. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so once I was out of the academy, so after my 9 months of training, it was, I think I graduated from the academy in the spring of 2004. And then in September 2004, on the 28th, was when this call came in. So that call for me was kind of weird because when you come out of the academy, and you get assigned to your patrol squad, you do a lot of the like wagon driving, and you do a lot of tasks that at the time you kind of think are like meaningless, and you don't want to be kind of stuck to the wagon. You want to be out there, getting involved in stuff. But it's actually a really good learning opportunity if you have the the mindset to just absorb what's going on, because as we all know, policing, there's a lot to it. So, but anyways. was strange for me because I was like a shared responsibility of the wagon driver with some other guys that were new. And I spent a lot of time driving it. But this one night, someone called in sick. One of our squad mates, Mike McPherson, called in sick. So there was a position in what we called the beat car at the time. And the beat car was kind of the cool thing at the time because it was away from the call board and kind of a proactive hunting style thing. And so you got to be on your own, away from, like I said, away from the call board, away from sort of the paper stuff. And you got to just go and find warrants and check people and do all that kind of, proactive style policing that everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people like. And that was something that I was really interested in, really keen on. So, and as the night unfolded, it was a bizarre, it was just kind of strange because, again, I'm not supposed to be in this car. I'm supposed to be in this other assignment. I'm with a partner that I'm not normally with, but John Filippelli, who at the time was senior to me by a few years and a really tactical guy, ended up going to ERT later on or shortly after the incident. And we were kind of off on our own. And as the night's unfolding, we're doing the beat car stuff, checking things, being proactive. And we get this call. We get raised on the radio by dispatch saying, "Hey, can you attend this call to 41st and Victoria? It's a domestic." And how it unfolded was this: the victim of the domestic was the husband or boyfriend, and he had said that he had been hit with a hockey stick or something. His wife had beaten him with a hockey stick, and he seemed intoxicated and stuff like that. So this was kind of a bizarre thing to happen to the beat car because you normally didn't get assigned calls, so that was weird. And then it was kind of a report call, so just kind of go and take this guy's information, see what's going we were a bit caught off guard by it, so it was unexpected, and off we went to do this report call. It was 41st and Victoria, and that's sort of where the incident started and finished. And so when we, as we were approaching the area, for anybody who's familiar with Vancouver, they'll know, but there used to be a 7-Eleven on the corner. It was kind of a lower, or not lower income, but it was kind of more of a rundown area. And there were lots of drug addicts would hang out in that area at times, and there were crack houses and stuff around there for quite some time. But as we pull up there, there's nobody there that kind of meets the description. There's only one person near the corner sitting on a bus stop, and he didn't really fit the bill as to what we were looking for. But as we pull into the left-hand turn lane to go from 41st onto Victoria, this male stands up and he puts his hands in the shape of an imaginary gun and starts pulling the trigger and indicating that he's shooting at us. So we think, well, who's this asshole? Like, we're coming here to help him. Still thinking he might be the victim, right? Who's this guy? He wants our help, and then he does all this stuff. So it was kind of strange. And so we pull over to the curb, and we're going to kind of read this guy the riot act a little bit about being respectful, and like when you call for help, we come to help you, and we're here to assist you, but you should be a little bit more respectful with how you treat us. And as soon as we pull the car over to the curb, the male rushes to the car. Like he comes very quickly up to the driver's side, or sorry, not the driver's side, the passenger side door, and he's yelling kind of through the window. And so I bring the window down a bit and start yelling, like giving him commands, saying, get back, get away from the car, get away, step back. And I gave him quite a number of commands, and he just wasn't listening. He was upset. Still at the time, being so new on the road, it's like my mind was just spinning. It was it's hard to put even into words, like what I was going through. I wasn't like calculating anything. I wasn't thinking about anything. It was just like, whoa, like get back. Like, what are you doing? Like still kind of thinking that he's this victim and not realizing he had mental health issues, and he was a bit deranged, and he was off his meds, and he was a significant threat. And so repeating giving commands, and finally he doesn't listen. So I lean in towards the car, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to move in here and open the door handle. I'm going to boot the door open and forcefully move him back and start to deal with him. And as I did that, kicked the car door open, he stepped back quite quickly. And then the door opened, I stepped out, And at the time I was standing on street level and he was up on the sidewalk. So there's that, I think it's 4 or 6 inch difference. So he was quite, I think that made him my height or a little bit taller. And he was a pretty big burly guy, big beard and stuff. And he came right in and sort of trapped me in the doorwell. And I continued to like give him commands. And so a lot of like get back, get away, step back, police, again, all that stuff that you kind of learn in the academy, but not really thinking that you need to, or that it needs to elevate or escalate further than that. So, and then finally he stopped and he just kind of did a half turn. And as he did this half turn, his hands disappeared behind him. And when he came back up, he started, I initially thought was like hitting me or punching me, but it turned out he had a drywall saw, like a 10-inch drywall saw down the back of his pants or somewhere behind him. And he came back and he thrust the drywall saw like into my chest, and it hit the trauma plate and the book in the notebook area, and it bent the drywall saw, which was thank goodness, right? It bent the drywall saw, which means it was a little bit less like useful to him, I guess. But he just repeatedly kept stabbing me, and he got my arm. He cut my right arm down to the my wounds are all defensive wounds, like trying to like still realizing what's going on or just cluing in, but it's, we're fighting. And then I remember yelling over to John, like, hey, he's stabbing me or whatever. And John, John got out of the car, moved around to the side. And as we were doing that, he had stabbed me, I think 4 or 6 times or whatever, just puncture wounds in the leg. Eventually I was able to fight him, like kind of get him back, or I can't remember whether it was like the fight like that I put up or the fact that John distracted him. And he turned his attention to John. And as he did that, I was able to move behind him and get away from him and stuff. And as I was doing that, John was giving him commands, and he ended up having to shoot the male. And he John, like I said, is a really tactical guy. He was quite a good shot, like always, cross pistols and all that stuff. So which is good, because as I was moving behind the male, John was shooting him. So that was I guess afterwards seemed exciting, but at the time I'm just moving away and everything's happening so quickly. And I think it happened like within 30 seconds, less than a minute, felt like. Could have been longer, but that's kind of what it felt like. And John shot him. He went down, and then, everything, the radio broadcast and stuff. And of course, all this stuff's occurring. I think it all occurred. I don't really remember because I know I didn't broadcast on the radio. So I'm not sure if John did or not, but he must have. But also, the cavalry, everybody comes in, and Vancouver's got a lot of people working at any given time. So there was a lot of people that showed up, and I'm pretty sure it was like not just our district, but like everybody. So it was a huge show of support, which was nice. And then it was, we had some pretty senior people, like including John, but you go through the whole, turn over your sidearm. Of course, I'm going to the hospital because I've got these stab wounds and stuff. And they're not sure how bad it is. I know I had like the one in the chest, the trauma plate, and the notebook had like a puncture hole in it. And then there was like one in my leg and one in my calf, and my arm was cut to the bone. But it was so weird. I didn't know it was a drywall saw, but it was like the wrist cut was to the bone, which was kind of small. But then there was those, if the drywall saw's got the teeth, and then there was these teeth marks all the way down from wrist to elbow, and so it was just a weird. Everybody that didn't realize what was going on, and I didn't either, just saw this big, huge claw mark in my arm. So off to go to the hospital, and it unfolded from there. It was interesting. Like,
You know what's amazing as you recount the situation is that 15 years ago, we're coming on 15 years, and it's just like this, it becomes real again for you.
Yeah.
So it impresses upon me about how much impact any of these incidents have on our police officers, and certainly first responders for the most part. The amount of impact it has for your life is incredible. And as you recounted it, it was very clear to me that you were right there and you were seeing these visual pictures of what was happening.
Yeah, it's very true.
Tell me a little bit about sort of what happens next. So obviously, did you have a girlfriend or a wife at that time?
Yeah, I was married. I had a young daughter and wife, Jody, Aaron's sister. We'd been married for a few years. I probably should remember this, but a few years at the
That's
time.
right.
And I just wanted, I really appreciate the fact that Jody was there to help me out from the beginning. I mean, she's been there the whole time, but it really made a big difference for me. And she was able to help listen and just be there when I needed somebody and understand what was going on. And it was very helpful for what I was going through. And we're at the hospital, and I just remember not really knowing, as it unfolds and you start to get a little bit more involved with what's happening with people coming to visit, and deputy chiefs are showing up and inspectors and stuff like that, and really, like I said, good show of support from the peers, and everybody's really helpful and everybody's concerned, and it was a good start to what was a shitty situation. So
I'd be interested, Craig. So typically what happens in these situations is you see a large amount of support right at the start.
Yep.
You see your fellow officers, your friends, your family, everyone sort of coming to be able to support you. But after a week or 2 weeks, that support goes away. And I'd love to sort of hear how that sort of was challenging as you progressed through and getting back to work.
Yeah, it was interesting because, like you said, the huge show of support right away, and then I think it's a couple things for me, and I know I've been through that scenario with other people who have been injured on the job or have gone through really traumatic experiences, is that it's because everybody's so unique in how they deal with stress and trauma and all this stuff. It's difficult to say whether you need more support or you need more people there or you need less, need people to back away and to and just give you space. For me, I found that, and it's totally against everything we learn as police officers, is that because immediately you're not allowed to, you can't talk to anybody, can't say anything, can't share any information, can't do anything. But for myself, and I know that this is out there, not just my own opinion, but people always say you need to talk about stuff, you need to get it off your chest, you need to vent, you need to do all this stuff. But for me, it's well, you're not supposed to do that. You haven't got your lawyer. And this was before the OPCC and the IO were here, yes. But it was still very similar. You want to have the best story, the best recount of the events, and you don't want to be talking to other people, because really what you do then is you make them witnesses and you bring them involved, and then you're causing, and you don't want to be causing your peers or people more grief or anything, and you don't want your account of the events to be misconstrued, or all of a sudden the telephone game happens and it's way over here out in left field before it gets back to you. So, yes. For me it was like I said, I talked to Jody about it, my wife. It was funny because I didn't want to call and wake her up. It was kind of the middle of the night, but I just wanted to, because I wasn't sure what time I'd be getting home at. I didn't want her to be worried. So I ended up calling Aaron's mother, Eileen Hill, my mother-in-law, and sort of seeing what she would like. So fortunately for Jody, she was able to sleep and get a good night's rest. But I think Eileen was reliving part of her younger years when she was married to a police officer and had to go through a bunch of traumatic incidents. So I don't think I did her any favors, but I was kind of wondering the best way to handle it, because they were talking about sending the car or calling or whatever. And I'm like, oh, no, don't do any of that stuff, right? Like if I don't show up at home, I'm working late, phone call's bad, someone shows up at the door, that's really bad. So that's Absolutely. Kind of the way it goes. I'm sure it's the same here. So
tell me about how long you were off.
I was off for, I think, 3 to 4 months. But I was just out of the academy, so I really I didn't want to be off. I don't know what it's like for most people, but I didn't even like my 4 days off. I just wanted to get back out there and just be a sponge and absorb all this stuff, and everybody who I guess knew better, for lack of a better way to put it, but said, hey, take your time off, just let it unfold, take your time off. But I had a young family. I was set up for a bunch of overtime shifts. I wanted to make a little extra money. I like I said, I didn't even want to be off, but it was about 3 months. So
after a critical incident like this, often people have problems with sleeping or with flashbacks or with other kinds of sort of stresses that are coming now to the front. What did you find?
I had the same sleeping issues. I know, my wife Jody, she didn't bring it up a lot, but I find out now later on that there were night terrors, fighting nightmares and stuff like that. I even found in the daytime, because eventually people stop calling to see how you're doing because they want to give you your space, but you're sitting there at home, you can't go to work, and you're just kind of there with your thoughts, and everybody else, life has to go on. Kids go to school, wife goes to work, so you're there, and it's and then you're just kind of thinking about, the what ifs, and did I do everything I should have done? Was I, thankfully I wasn't another police video that you see at the JI. And but yeah, so there was the night terrors and the flashbacks and all that stuff, and some of them in the very beginning were happening in the daytime. I remember one guy showed up to my door. I think he was a landscaper or something like that, but he was a big kind of guy, older guy with a beard, and I'm like, fills with the front door. I'm like, is this actually happening, or am I just reliving this incident? So there was lots of that stuff in the very beginning, lots of adrenaline, lots of sleepless nights. So it was an interesting first little bit.
And you're a brand new police officer.
Yeah.
I've got to say that 15 years ago, certainly in the police department I worked in 15 years ago, we didn't have the level of support we do now. So what were you doing to be able to, in order to advance yourself and get better? What were some of your strategies?
Actually, I was pretty lucky that the Vancouver Police did have some pretty good avenues set in there. They had the SISM team. I was assigned a person that was to call me and make sure everything was okay. All that stuff was really appreciated. What I also found was, and I continue to find this out, what surprises me is over the years, is that there are so many people that have been through stuff like this. You're not the first person that this is happening. No matter, well, I shouldn't say that, but it seemed to me that no matter how unique you think your situation is, there's someone else that this has happened to, and they've gone through, historically probably gone through it with less support or different means to deal with stuff. But lots of people have been stabbed, lots of people have been attacked, and I had to deal with this kind of trauma. And so there was one officer who was senior to me at the time. I didn't really know him, but I ended up working for him later and knowing him through different avenues. Mike Campbell, who went through a very similar situation right when he was brand new to the road, however many years ago it was. And, he, like my sergeant at the time, reached out to him, and he called, and it was just it was just nice to have. It was that kind of peer support. And then there was also the going to see the psychiatrist, having that opportunity to kind of go through it and stuff like that, and make sure there's not deeper issues or problems or stuff going on, and you're kind of you're recovering and ready to go back. So yes. So that was good. As far as my own personal ways to deal with what was going on, is that I remember thinking to myself, well, it's a young family. It's it wasn't necessarily immediately, but I started to write a couple keep a log of what was going on. So that was good. And with that, an extension of that log became a recount or a sort of an explanation to my children now, but at the time it was my child, my daughter Carson. Just to explain kind of what happened and the history of, a little bit of, in case I'm not there, because now realizing that, it's not always a walk in the park. Like at any time you could be involved in an incident, and I was fortunate enough to come home from the incident, but some people aren't. And so I was kind of dealing with all that emotion and trying to process, her growing up without a dad and all that stuff. So.
What about, were you having any problems sleeping? Did you have to do anything for sleep at all? Or were you able to get some good sleep?
Yeah, I didn't do it. Like, I didn't take any medication or anything. I think I just kind of had a few nights where I slept like minimal hours. And then when I fell asleep, I fell asleep. And it just takes time. For me, it took time. It was over time, instead of being up till 2 or 3 in the morning, it would be, 1 o'clock, then it was midnight, then it was, it slowly got better. And then, it kind of fades away and you never really, you don't totally forget everything, but things got better for me, which was good. So.
Absolutely, and I can see that today. Obviously, we brought it right back to the forefront here today, and you relived it for us. So thank you for that. Tell me a little bit about fitness. Anything else that you did in relation to sort of that time off and spending 8 hours? I imagine your wife Jody was working, and so did you have that time alone?
Yeah, it was. Jody was working. There was quite a bit of time alone, and I did fill that time with with my other incidents where I had time off for my incident. I had time off as well. I fill it with lots of working out. In a funny way, it's a good way to lose weight, I guess, because when you've got you kind of feel like relate to like movie stars. If you got 8 hours a day to work out. And you can, you're kind of, you have all this adrenaline, you have all this energy, and you're just, you're like, oh man, I can run forever today. Like, this is crazy. Like, I've never been able to run this far, this fast. Well, guess what? You're full of adrenaline, and you're trying to fight off this stress and stuff you're dealing with. So that's how I spent my days. I spent a lot of time, helping with my daughter Carson, like that end of it, just family time and I don't know, that part I don't remember that well. Some stuff is just so crystal clear, and some stuff just kind of fades away.
So I want to talk about sort of you going back to the road, and if you did anything special going back to the road. But then I know that you've experienced a few other incidents, and what you learned from your first one that helped you through the second or third incident.
Yeah, so going back to the road was, like I said, I rushed back. I wanted to get back. I felt like the need to fill my days with something other than sitting around and working out and stuff. So as soon as I was able to get back, I went back. It was tough to get back on the road. Like, I was able to work with partners a little bit, not on my own. Like my sergeant in the police department was extremely accommodating. For what I was going through and what I needed. So I was very grateful for that. And I started to move, whether I thought it was because of, for me, it was because I liked the idea of it, but I started to move more into like surveillance, property crime stuff, out of the uniform and into some more of a plainclothes thing, not immediately recognizable as a police officer. So and that's kind of how the next decade went. I moved from like surveillance to surveillance type thing, but eventually you have to go back to the road, and you got to kind of pay your dues and do that stuff, which is fine. So when I went back to the road my second time, and keep in mind for that, I think it was 9 years that went by, or 10 years. In between there was like the awards, for some reason or another, all of a sudden these commendations started coming down the pipe, and I was appreciative and overwhelmed. I didn't really understand how they worked, like what was behind it all and all that stuff. So, but it was like I was put forward for Chiefs commendations and national awards, and I even got one from Kevlar. For something to do with their vests. And I mean, again, I was really appreciative of the awards, but for me, it was like, I was like the victim. I didn't really, like, John was the hero, and I was kind of the victim of it all. So it was that was a tough part to deal with, because I was still fighting with the fact, well, would I have survived if I was on my own? Because here I am with a partner. I'm lucky because, like a lot of police departments, I think almost everywhere else, you work by yourself. I mean, you've got people close by and partners you go to calls with, but a lot of times you're on your own. So here I am. At least I've got a partner like right there, ready to react. So So that was good. But if I was on my own, would I have like survived that incident? And then, did I make the right decisions? Should I have done something sooner? Should I have not given so many commands? Should I have known that knife was there? That, what could I have done differently? And everybody's good. Like they tell you, no. Like it's, you did everything you could. You did, you reacted. But it's hard to say. Are they just saying that to make you feel better, or are they saying that because that's the reality? So I think you have to. For me, I had to like figure that stuff out myself, and so. Over the next time, so there I go back to patrol. I owe this time to the road, and back in uniform again, and moving into like the plainclothes car, because coming from surveillance, you have that experience, so you get to go you do some plainclothes, some stuff, and I worked with a couple other partners that were really good. And one of the incidents that, 2013 seemed to be I think it was 2013 was my next. 2013, the beginning of the year, seemed to be amping up with this. Like I seem to be a magnet for some edged weapon stuff. So we get a suicide by cop where a guy, he's supposed to be this jumper on the second narrows that we're looking for, and we can't find him. And it's a very vague description. And they're like, oh well, we have the last we heard he was at this payphone at Cassiar and Hastings near the Esso. There's an Esso gas station with a Tim Hortons there, and we roll into the parking lot, and there's this guy near the phone, kind of dressed the way this guy's dressed, and he looks at us, and he's like that crazy stare, and he runs into the Tim Hortons, and he runs behind the counter, or runs in the Esso and runs behind the counter as we're getting out and we're approaching. He goes behind the counter and he grabs a knife, and he starts like waving it around and threatening people and stuff. So I was with Albert Lou at the time. We were in this. Esso station, and we're trying to get these people out of there and workers and get everybody out, and he's rushing, like he starts to rush us, and here I am again with my gun out thinking, man, we're gonna have to shoot somebody here. And just as we get ready to have to actually escalate, we notice it's like a butter spreader. It's a rounded butter spreader with some butter on the end of it that he's grabbed, and so he and I backed out, and the guy's in there, and we contain it, and he came out a second time again, and he didn't change and get a butcher knife or anything. He brought the butter spreader out and he went after Albert. And afterwards we talked about it a bit, and he had noticed it right away. I didn't really notice it as quickly as he did, but it was like, oh man, here we go again with the
back to
knives.
2004.
Yeah, right back to 2004, and so it was just. I don't know. It just seemed to be getting like the knife calls seemed to be coming more frequently, and it was just I guess another day, and then you fast forward to a couple months. I think it was April or May, and I'm plainclothes again, working with another constable who was working his best to become a dogman, and so he needed some time to go and train. And I was on my own, and as a one-man plainclothes, I don't know what it's like here when you work plainclothes, but in Vancouver, you're because you're not immediately recognizable as a police officer, you're not encouraged to go to in-progress calls and stuff. But this call started to unfold. It was in the 1100 Lakewood, unfolded like they were going to need plainclothes officers possibly to get eyes to make observations and stuff like that. And so even though I tried to get on the call from the very beginning, as the call ramped up, and the call was of a deranged woman that was threatening her roommates and her roommates and friends of roommates that were at the house. She was like talking in like a kind of a demonic voice, and she had this knife, and she was threatening people and stuff. So I thought, well, I'll start heading that way, and I told him, yeah, just show me on the call. I'll head that way, and I didn't race her, but went there in a bit of a hurry, thinking that people were going to be on scene, and I was just going to kind of be the support. But when I showed up on scene, I was the only car in the block. So I don't know if people will admit to this or not, but it's not the first time I drove to the wrong block going to a call. So
it's true,
right? Yeah. So I get there and I'm like, am I in the right spot here? Like, and then I put my police car in a certain spot and out of view, and I'm about a block out. So I get out and I'm like, I don't normally do it, but I grab my police jacket. And I just that day went and got a brand new one with the fully visible Vancouver Police, and they just changed them over to really nice jackets, and grabbed them and put it on. I start walking down the street, and as I'm walking down the street, I see this commotion down probably about a 3/4 of a block, Vancouver block away on the west side of the street, and there's people out there in the big commotion. And then I see this mailman come flying down the out of a front yard area and sprinting south towards me, and I can see this woman behind him, and she's running with this butcher knife in her hand, and she's trying to slash this mailman. And she's like gaining, and it's, again, like I relive it and make light of it, but it was a pretty serious thing. But he had his, like, I could see his hat. He had like a Tilly hat on, and it was kind of off the back of his head, and he had the mail bag, and he was running and screaming, and she was running after him screaming, and he ran by me and said something like, there's a woman with a knife, and I'm like, man, I know, he's like, I can see her, and then I giving the commands, but even from a half a block away, I was giving commands, and like Vancouver Police, and she wouldn't stop, and she just wouldn't stop, and she just kept running, and she was probably within like 20 feet, 15 feet before I made the decision to shoot her, and she went. She went down. She didn't die. I ended up shooting her in the legs. Again, to make light of it, I mean, really, like, I make excuses, but really it was a lot of adrenaline stuff. Like, I missed. I was going center mass, and she was running and flailing and doing this crazy stuff, and I ended up hitting. At least I hit her twice because I was really concerned after that I had missed, but. So there I was by myself, and dealt with this situation, dealt with this mailman, dealt with this person with a knife, and then got on the radio, and, you do that big breath, and you try and sound like everything's, hey, it's no big deal, just another day on the job, like, hey, shots fired, blah, blah, blah. And but that incident was really important to me, because up until that time, I had the question in my mind, like, can I deal with, can I handle this? Can I do it? Can I do the job? And that one, it was like almost a relief. Like, it was a huge incident. It was like major. It was still the same thing, but it was like this huge monkey off my back that was like, you know what, you did it. So.
Yes. And I can just imagine how stressful that would be to actually have your weapon out, to have this person running at you. And we know that distance of 21 feet can be closed in less than a second. And when we always know that there has to be a safe distance. So certainly. Tell us about how you managed that incident as well.
You mean post-incident?
Yes.
Like I said, for me, it was again, huge support from the police, and I remember, or the VPD, but it was, again, the peer support. People were there. Everybody was really helpful. Of course, they, even the taking of my sidearm and all that stuff, which is can be a very traumatic experience. Like what it is for me, like someone, you have to give it over and you're like, okay, everybody treats you like you've done something wrong, even though, like you've done everything
Save
right.
Someone's life.
You save someone's life, but
Yes.
here you are, now you're the what's it called, the suspect officer or whatever it is now, and you're not a witness officer anymore, but everybody was good. So kind of almost the same as the other incident, except for the hospital part. Like, go back to the police department, up to the 7th floor type thing, just kind of hang out. Lots of inspectors and deputies and stuff pop in and show their support, which is really good. Vancouver Police with the CISM and with that critical incident support, but again, for me, it was like, no, this is a good shooting. Like, this was easier for me to deal with, because it was like I said, it was that big monkey off your back type thing where
Yes.
you can deal with it. So I should talk to Jody a little bit more about it, but it didn't feel like it really had as much weight, as I wasn't just the victim.
Yes.
I was,
You don't rethink it all.
yeah,
And say, what
didn't
if?
replay it and do the what ifs. I was like, no,
Yes.
I did it. I knew there was going to be some of the joking about like, well, maybe you're not such a good shot or whatever, and that's fine. But the good part is she survived. She didn't die. So that was a very fortunate there, because you don't have that weight, because I think that's a huge weight for some guys that have to bear that responsibility. And I didn't have to do that. It was almost like just you used a lower level of force, right?
Yes.
As opposed, even though it was the highest level that we have. So I was very fortunate with that. And
I want to capture something that you said before I sort of bring this around and kind of wrap it up for us, is that you said humor. And how did you use humor, or how was humor used to be able to assist?
For me, it was I think it was the ability to, like on the peer side, it was the joking and the it was the things that people wouldn't find funny. Well, like with the second one, with the shooting, you missed.
Right.
And just for me, it was like, instead of wallowing in it, or even with the initial stabbing where I was the victim, you're the most decorated victim in the VPD type thing, and to me it was funny, because it was like, we were just, it was a way to talk through it. It was a way people were acknowledging it. It was good, and they made light of it, and I didn't take it personally. I didn't take it like a slag. I was like, yeah, well, without me, John's he's a murderer. So
right.
He needs me to be a hero, right? So, we joked about that, and so the humor part of it was super important, and it plays a big part in our family dynamic. Jody and Aaron and Eileen and stuff like that. Humor is a big part, because you just if you take it all really seriously, it just grinds you down. Like some of it you have to, and you don't have a choice. But if any way you can bring humor into it and just make light of some really, I mean, it's the same for all police, right? Like, we make light of situations and people don't understand it, but it kind of helps you get through the really shitty times that are on the road that can be there. And so it's an important, for me, it was a super important part of it all. And
absolutely. And for anyone that's listening that may not know the relationship, the founder of the Bend Don't Break podcast, Craig and Aaron Hill, are brother-in-laws. So as a result, that's sort of how I get to know your story. And I was grateful for Aaron being able to suggest our ability to speak this afternoon. Now, one thing I want to sort of as we conclude here, I want to bring to everyone's attention is the purpose of this broadcast is for us to be able to make sure that people hear other stories. So something that you said that I thought was very critical was that you're never alone. There's other people that have gone through similar stories, and as a result of going through similar stories, they're able to reduce some of the stress that they're feeling, this feeling that they're alone, and by actually sharing their stories with other people. And that's really what you've assisted us with today as well, by sharing your story. So you actually gave us the golden nugget of the reason why we have Bend Don't Break. It's about the ability to be able to share, and you're never alone out there for first responders, and all of us are going through those challenges. But in addition, I want to say some things that I think that are unique in your story that I haven't heard before, and this is my 7th or 8th or 9th of one of these. And the one thing is that you wrote a little diary to your child, which I kept notes on that, and I call it a diary, and I think you called it a log, but really, I think that's a very unique strategy for you to be able to manage some of the feelings that you have, and put it in a way that others might understand, and that's probably therapeutic to a certain extent. Any thoughts on that?
For me, it was super helpful, because, like I said, I was staring in like right in the face the idea that, hey, this could happen, and clearly there's an edged weapon thing in my my career choice. So at any time I feel like I wasn't going to come. Maybe I wouldn't be home. Well, what do my kids, or will they know who I was, how I grew up? So it started out as like a log of the incident. We're all kind of told to keep those logs and keep your memory fresh for when you're going through your process, but. Then it kind of morphed into this thing. Well, hey, I actually wrote one years later. I added one for my son as well, thinking like, this is where I came from. This is who this is how I grew up. This is how my family was, really strong. And my parents were quite religious, but they were very no matter how bad things get, just, be strong enough to fight through them. And so that was important. And it was important for me at the time. And it really helped, I think, with, making sure that I knew that they would know who their dad was. Because when I was growing up, my uncle was a firefighter, and he died in a fire in Calgary, as a hero. A building fell on him. And I remember watching my cousins grow up and babies and stuff like that. And, maybe he didn't have a chance. Like, his stuff was all memories and what we remembered of him and stuff like that. And this log was kind of a first account of, like, my memories. Here they are. This is who your grandpa was. This is where I grew up. This is how I did things. So this is how I came to be where I am. So I think kids don't appreciate it when they're super young, but I really do think they appreciate it later. So that was comforting to me to give that.
Completely. I think it's brilliant. And I think it's something that, anyone that's feeling some challenges should be considering on whether or not to do. I think it's really, really valuable. Well, I learned 3 things here today. Well, actually, probably 4. The first thing is, I don't know if I ever want to be a partner with you. Yeah. That would be the first thing. Secondly, obviously, you're not alone in all seriousness. You're never alone in when you're dealing with these. There's other people that have gone through similar situations, and there's that ability to reach out and talk to other people and learn from how they managed it. Secondly, this diary and log idea, I think, is a great idea for people to be able to find comfort, be able to express themselves in a different manner. And third is take time, and it's patience, right? Being patient with this process and making sure you get through it properly. So, Aaron, as we're wrapping up here, what do you got for us?
I got nothing insightful other than I'll just add to the humor tidbit there that Craig touched on the family. And I remember I remember specifically a Christmas dinner we had the year after the shooting, and we talked about jokes. And with my tactical background and Craig with a surveillance background, the ongoing joke was the ERT TAC guys would shoot for center mass, whereas surveillance guys shoot for legs. And never understand that. So.
That's right. True. Everyone needs skills.
Absolutely.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let me say, Craig, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that certainly in many of these circumstances, it as it did today, it brought you right back to the situation, and there's no doubt in my mind that you've been able to work yourself through that. You obviously are a significant contributor to the Vancouver Police Department, and I'm sure the VPD is very proud of you and the work that you do for the community there. So I would like to give you, because you've participated in our podcast, my Chief's coin, and we appreciate you being part of this podcast, and certainly I look forward to our continued work together in this wonderful profession of policing. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
These productions never come without a lot of work from everyone involved. A big shout out and thank you to Constable Aaron Hill, Melissa Granum, and Nikki Hewitt for producing and recording, and of course post-production done by Podfly. Next week on Bend, Don't Break.
When you become a slave to a substance like painkillers or opioids, it's amazing how it just distorts your mind. Your thought process it just becomes flawed. And the only thing that I thought about was, do I have enough painkillers to get me through today? And if I don't, I need to get some.
For more episodes, you can find us on iTunes and Google Play. If you have a story to tell, go to deltapolice.ca/podcast to submit your idea. Don't forget to subscribe to and rate our podcast. And if you want to connect, we're on all major social media platforms. Once again, thanks for tuning in.